I think it's a really interesting question about which economic perspective I most identify with. And the reason why this question kind of got me thinking a little bit was um, based off of what I wish I identified with or what was more normal, and then what I actually probably identify with as far as how I actually spend my money or how I operate in an economical world. And what I mean by that is, especially when we're talking about environmental or ecological economics, and we're talking about the value of something in relationship to its effect on the environment or the cost it has ecologically, this is like a really interesting concept, but unfortunately doesn't hold weight in my own life. And what I mean by that is like something could have a pretty negative side effect on the economy and could still be incredibly affordable to me. And in the world that I live in, that's not always even a thought when consuming a good. And it is somewhat of a privilege to be able to view the world and operate in the world in a way that you can make decisions based on the ecological footprint of what you're purchasing versus just the cost of goods. So like I don't know if any of you guys remember this, but like a while back there was this fad when I was in high school. There were these bracelets that were like shaped like animals, and when they were just like these rubber bracelets that you wear on your arms. I think they were called silly bands. And then you'd pull them off and let them kind of shrink to their original size, and they would shape different animals. And we would just like collect tons of them all up your arm, and you'd trade them at school, and it was really, really popular for a short amount of time, as a lot of fads are. And you'd buy a packet of these for $5, and you'd get however many were in there. And you'd hope that you get new ones, and you kind of collect and try to trade for some cool ones. And this is definitely a perspective of neoclassical economics, because the cost of these goods is way lower than the $5 pack of what they were. And the environmental impact of them was pretty terrible, because a short-term fad is just absolutely wasteful, not to mention that they're just made out of like plastics, and they've been shipped from China or wherever they were manufactured in bulk. And we're not even mentioning the side effects that this has globally on just like labor laws, etc. And I, especially as a young teenager, didn't think about these things. And I thought about the emotional aspect of purchasing something that was high in demand, high in popularity, that I could trade with my friends and could enjoy. And this is like a small story of what I do pretty much daily in my spending habits. Of when I'm picking out a place to live, I'm basing it off of an emotional response to what I want and what I need, as well as what I can afford. And that neoclassical way of seeing the world as far as economics goes is unfortunately how I have to respond to the world, because I don't necessarily have the luxury to look at all of the economic or ecological perspectives of my purchases. And now that's not always the case. I can be a good consumer. It can start to shift that perspective, and that's a desire of mine. I want to be a good consumer who cares about how things are made, cares about fair trade, cares about where it comes from and the damages it's doing to the earth. But a lot of my responses, unfortunately, if I'm being really realistic with myself, do come from a place where I relate to and I identify with the neoclassical perspective of economics, which is like a more adaptive version of supply and demand based off of emotional reactions to something, and the demand of something super high because everyone wants it, and then super low when it becomes really popular and we move on. And I do feel pretty bad about this. I feel bad about this when I walk through Walmart or Target and I see the $5 section, or at Christmas time when you go through and everyone wants to buy this Christmas item and it's just like packed. And then the next day after Christmas, it's discounted. the supply and demand of it. And if you can wait till after, then why wouldn't you? But most likely you want it before the emotional, like the day of the emotional response, which is Christmas. You want to have it for Christmas to experience that. And we're not necessarily having the perspective of how does this affect our world? And wouldn't it be cool? I think it'd be really cool if the price and the demand for the products that we have were based off of the economic footprint they had, and the value of something increased in a sense of how the patterns of how we purchased were based around how this affected our environment. That would be a really cool thing, and I hope to someday get to a place where I can think about that for everything. And I should get to a place where I think about that a little bit more in my life. And so I think this is a cool question to think about even more, and has given me a lot of opportunity to contemplate ways that I can already begin doing that. Thanks.